Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignot, CEO of the cultural communications agency, The Flash. Each episode, I bring on a different business leader who's doing some game-changing work. And today's episode, I'm super delighted to have Carla Parris, who's an entertainment sports lawyer and the host of the Business of Carnival web and TV series. She has a fascinating story and is doing some phenomenal work, and it's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Carla.
Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. As you know, podcast starts out with the same question every single time as the first question. And I'm very curious to see what your answer is going to be. So, Carla, what was your first job?
My first job was working in the corporate communications and marketing department of a power production company in Trinidad and Tobago.
And what did you learn? How was that?
It was really cool. So when I was at that job, I was literally, I think maybe just 18, and I was home from law school for the summer, and I wanted to do something different. And I just decided, why not see if I can get a role in corporate comms. And I think, it was so long ago, I don't remember all the different roles, but I know it had to do with brand activation, marketing strategy. And it's really interesting when you kind of look back at your life and you realize that life gives you clues. Because although I never went into that field of communications or marketing, I found myself in my role as the producer of a web and TV series having to understand marketing really organically and use some of the tools. Perhaps not that I learned back then in terms of digital media, but just marketing in general, So I kind of realized that it was always something that I had a passion for when I look back at, my life.
That's why I always ask this question as the first one, because almost everyone has the same reaction, like, oh, well, now that I think about it, the job that I mentioned definitely helped play a part or shape what I ended up doing in my current life. So it makes perfect sense. So I totally get it. So you go from that job to now being so incredibly multifaceted. So what was that career journey like?
Oh gosh, I don't think you have enough time.
Okay, I'll take the 2-minute version. How about that?
So in the 2-minute version is that I've literally had to create these rules. When I graduated from law school, there were no entertainment lawyers in Trinidad and Tobago. No, it just was not a field that at all was really known. In order to even start and work with my own practice, I actually took a couple of years off of law. And that's what I find is really interesting. And what I say to, kind of kids coming out of university all the time, if you're not sure, it's okay to go in a totally different direction. Like, you don't have to do one thing for the rest of your life. So I basically, once I got called to the bar in Trinidad, I moved away to London for 2 years on what was called then a working holiday visa. And for 2 years, worked in all kinds of random jobs. I was a hospital administrator. I worked in a marketing agency. I did all kinds of things. But for the last year, I ended up working in a magazine as a magazine editor for a cultural production. And when I came back from that, to make a long story short, I kind of combined my practical experience working in media. I worked in Trinidad's television station for about a year, one of our television stations, as an entertainment news reporter. And that's when I met so many people in the creative industry who I realized were really badly in need of legal representation and trying to understand how to commercialize everything that they did, but essentially gave away for free. So that's how I combined everything and became an entertainment and sports lawyer.
And so what's that like? Because you're obviously based in Trinidad, so it's a different set of circumstances than it's here in the US.
Yeah, I would imagine it's very different because, New York, LA, Atlanta, those are very established markets in terms of entertainment industry. Hair, I've had to do a lot of work over the past 10 years. Incidentally, this month is my 10-year anniversary of having my practice.
Awesome.
And
Congratulations.
thank you so much. Actually, only realized that a couple days ago on LinkedIn. I saw that when I was looking back at my bio, that it was July is when I started this whole journey of having my practice. But I've spent a lot of time educating the market as to why they even needed me. Because what I realized is if I just started my practice and expected clients to show up, I probably would have had to change fields really quickly because nobody even knew what it meant. So I spent a lot of time on social media back then, 10 years ago, it was really just Facebook, kind of talking about what the business aspect of the industry meant. And I started this hashtag, the business of. And I would talk about the business of film, the business of music, the business of whatever it is, really sports, and why there's that connectivity between what you're doing as a hobby for the most part, but why it should be commercialized or can be, and how intellectual property can help you. And that's really been kind of what the difference was. In that when I've gone to American Bar Association conferences in New York and met other entertainment lawyers, they didn't have to do a lot of that education path because people already knew, you know, what the role of an entertainment lawyer was and what it was about. But their journey was more about, okay, what kind of clients should I land and what area? Whereas for me, it was that education. And then once that, got a little bit clearer to the market, it was about realizing that I had to do a bit of everything, music, film, fashion, and not niching down as many entertainment lawyers do globally and focusing on one area. I basically do a bit of all the creative aspects.
Awesome. So, being that you're an entertainment lawyer, and the basic entertainment world was driven to a halt last year, what were some of the lessons learned?
Lessons learned from me or for the industry?
For the industry that you've seen?
Well, I think some of the biggest lessons were that a lot of the performers, as in soca artists, people in really any genre really had to understand now the question of creating auxiliary streams of income, secondary streams, because many of our artists in the music sphere focus largely on live performances, especially as it pertains to Carnival, because of course Trinidad, and Tobago is the home of Carnival. So what tended to happen was that once Carnival finished and they had a hit song, they would use that one song as their main source of income for the rest of the year, traveling to every single carnival in the calendar, which is a lot, as opposed to thinking about, okay, how can I land global endorsement deals? What songs am I going to put in movies and films and earn money in licensing and different streams of revenue, mechanical licensing? That the focus wasn't really there. But now that the industry basically got shut down and has been for a greater part of a year and a half, we still don't have bars and nightclubs open. We still don't have live performance spaces open. It really was a shock to many that, listen, it's really time to level up.
That's interesting. So I'd love for you to look back up a little bit because a lot of folks who are probably listening have heard about Carnival, but don't know anything about it. So if you could spend 1 minute or so kind of just giving the overview of what Carnival is and why it's so awesome. And one day I will wear feathers. You heard me. You heard me here. Arlene from my team is probably going to be just fall on the floor when she hears this, but I kind of think that one day I could do the road and maybe wear some feathers. But for the larger audience, tell us what it all is.
Okay, so Carnival, and yes, you will be there one day, Laura. Let's speak it into existence. Next year, you will be on the road with us for 2 days in your beautiful feathers. So really what it is, it's a cultural festival which has come from, it dates back as far as slavery. What it really meant is an expression of music, of festivity, of culture. It was really a mechanism for persons in those days to self-express, to get out into the streets and have a parade and so on. And now for us, it's basically morphed into a whole season. We call it a carnival season, which starts usually in and around December, where we have festivals in steel pan, which is our national instrument. We have traditional elements of it, which celebrate um, other various aspects of our culture. And it culminates in 2 days on the road. It's called Carnival Monday and Tuesday, where people come out and you parade on the streets in your carnival costumes. There are hundreds of different carnival bands that you can take part in. There are soca music competitions. So basically, it literally is a season of festivity where the culture comes alive. And it's really a huge aspect of our culture, which we've exported to the world, because there are Trini-style carnivals in nearly every Caribbean country, and also Caribbean diaspora like New York, Miami, and so forth. Even in Europe, you can find Trinidad and Tobago style carnivals.
Awesome. And there are feathers.
Yes.
There are a lot of feathers and some incredible outfits that are just absolutely stunning. Like I said, my second here in command at DF goes every year, and her Instagram is just insane. And I'm like, that's crazy. But having now lived through COVID, I'm like, you know what? YOLO. So I definitely think it's something that at some point in the future, let's not get too ahead of ourselves in 2022 there, Carla. Maybe 2024, because I'd have to lose a lot of weight. So just saying.
Come as you are. Come as you are.
Yeah, I know that, you know that, but still. So, so for many folks, I don't think folks realize that, like, once you're at, you kind of kick off a Trinidad Carnival, you can go to all the carnivals and playing that music. So how have artists responded when you've been like, listen, here's how you actually expand your brand past just being hopping from carnival to carnival?
Well, the thing about it is that's a good segue into explaining why I even started this show, The Business of Carnival. It was for exactly that reason, because I found that not just artists, but a whole cadre of creative persons who are involved in Carnival, and that's from the performers, photographers, event producers, Carnival costume designers, were just these fabulously creative persons and companies, but a lot of them weren't kind of understanding how to leverage the intellectual property of what we were creating, of what the products that are being exported to the wider world. So I started the show in 2018 to talk to the person to the top of their game. So soca celebrity, designer, celebrity, and so on, and kind of talk them through what are your processes, how are you earning for that reason, so that we would not be in a position where we feel and we believe that our culture is being exploited, but the royalties, the earnings, and so forth aren't really coming back to us. So to answer your question, in terms of how did the musicians respond, well, I think for the first time, a lot of them fully grasped what I had been saying to them for years, either through the show, the mechanism of the YouTube series and the television series, or what I had said to them in private practice. Because a lot of the time, the general mentality tended to be, well, we're busy traveling, and they're earning quite a bit of money, because after Trinidad, there's Jamaica Carnival, then there's Barbados, then St. Lucia, Grenada, and it's just numerous. They felt as though when you look to the value proposition for them, the effort of the manager to sit down and negotiate these other deals, auxiliary streams, wasn't there. Now they truly understood, and many of them, it shifted their mindset completely in terms of wanting to put emphasis on these on the streams that were there all the time, but really took a lot more effort to generate.
Awesome. And, and speaking of that, how we actually got connected was because you had a viral thread a few weeks ago, talking just about this and relating that to a certain celebrity who didn't understand the importance of the Caribbean culture. So I'd love for you to share what happened with that.
Yeah, so that a couple of weeks ago, there was a global story where the Michael B. Jordan and members of his team applied for to register as a trademark a word called juve. And let me just clarify, because based on the form that is publicly available on the United States Patent and Trademark Office website, he did not apply for the trademark himself, but a lawyer would have filed it on behalf of one of his, company owners or whatnot. But it caused a lot of furor in the Caribbean and the Caribbean diaspora because the name Juve that they applied for has huge cultural significance, not just to Trinidad, but again, the diaspora. And it relates to Carnival and a very important aspect of Carnival for us. So I was interviewed by Essence Magazine in terms of what was my view on that. What does the trademark application mean? How can it affect us as Caribbean people moving forward? And basically, what I was saying is that it shed light on the need for Caribbean countries to really pay attention to intellectual property ownership, whether it be in the form of trademarks, whether it be in the form of getting together to understand specific cultural names that we can apply for, on a country level or even on a wider level. Through CARICOM or the OECS, so that the cultural festivals and cultural assets that we produce belong to us and remain with us. Even though we are, of course, we want people to come and participate, we want to enter into all kinds of different deals. We just want to make sure that the names and the significance, aren't unnecessarily diluted.
It's so important and so necessary. That's the thing that's, folks have to realize, own your stuff, and get it as many places as humanly possible where you own it so that this does not happen. But then, when there are cultural, screw ups, like, then respond accordingly. And, those guys didn't really do the best of that.
Well, I mean, they eventually, and I shouldn't even say eventually, I would say in a short period of time, there was a release on his Instagram page saying that, look, they kind of understand now the significance of the name. They're in the process of rebranding and so forth. So I think the period of time between the furor and the response was a short time frame. But I think what could have been done was a bit more research in terms of, well, what does this mean? What could the possible implications be in terms of, deciding to use a name such as this one for a rum product. But at the end of the day, I think that the lessons were definitely learned. I'm pretty sure that his team and the team of any other, globally based celebrity would look at a scenario like this a bit differently. The opportunity is still there. Should he choose or anyone else choose to want to collaborate with a Trinidadian-based, carnival organization or cultural organization. But the point is that these deals, I think, would need to be negotiated really clearly and properly and so forth, so that we make sure that the culture and commerce are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, stop being mutually exclusive. And the cool thing about it is that you have a TV show and a web series that talks more about this. So I'd love for you to share, like, what prompted you to create the TV show, web series, and what's the response been?
So I started the web series really as a hobby, and that was the really interesting thing about it. I launched it in January 2018 on my YouTube channel, which is my name. And really just as an outlet, a creative outlet, to explain just as what I've been talking about here, that Carnival has so many different facets to it. The events, the fashion, the music, so many different things, photography, videography. And as Caribbean people, we need to do a better job of understanding the value of what we create. So I started filming it in my aunt's living room, literally. Literally, I got together a small crew. There was no budget whatsoever. So I paid them out of pocket to produce this YouTube series, launched it, and I was shocked at the interest, because the thing about it is that, Laura, like sometimes when you have an idea that is not already out there, the interest from corporate sector, from commercial entities, from brands, just isn't there because there's not an obvious return on investment. So I had pitched the idea to a television station, a local television station, and they weren't interested. They'd said, well, nobody's really going to care about carnival and business. So, we have carnival shows all the time talking about the festivity and the fashion and the beauty. And I tried to explain to them that, yeah, but I'm trying to talk about the legal and the business aspect of it to kind of help our cultures and our economies to thrive. And nobody got it. So that's how I ended up just doing it on my own with no budget, started this thing. And with that one season that I had produced, February 2018, with four guests, there was huge interest, huge. So much so that I was able to produce an edition later that year in Barbados's Carnival, which is called Crop Over. And again, I had no budget, but the Bajan producer at the time was so interested in being on board that she said, look, I'd love to be a part of this. I will, film and edit for you at a great discount, which she did. And that's kind of how I went along until eventually, by the second season in 2019, after I had done Trinidad's edition, I actually got approached by a Trinidadian based in LA who was working for, has a license, I believe, with Paul Mitchell franchise. She saw it and she said, look, what can I do to support? And from then it's grown. It just kind of took a life of its own. I launched auxiliary Facebook, Instagram pages that support the show. It was picked up in a film festival in 2019 as well. It eventually became picked up by one of our top airlines in the Caribbean Airlines. It was shown on flight. And
Awesome.
Then this year, it was picked up by television, one of our local TV stations in Trinidad called TTT TV, Trinidad and Tobago Television. So the journey has just been something, Laura, that I could never have imagined. Like, I did not sit down with a business plan, when I first started this and sort of draft out and say, okay, I want to be on TV and I want to be on a airline and I want to have all these different things. It literally was just born out of a passion for education and getting tired of saying the same thing to every client that came to me individually and not feeling as though I was getting any results in terms of the larger sector and the larger Caribbean, because as one person, there's only so much I was able to do in terms of who was able to come. And then the other thing is, because entertainment law is still so niche and still largely misunderstood, a lot of people believe that they can't afford legal advice and sometimes aren't encouraged to seek legal advice in this field. So I figured, okay, well, as much as there's that barrier for so many people, let's see what I can do, with a show, not really knowing that this is the journey that it would have taken. But yeah, it's been exciting. It's continued to evolve. In fact, right now, as we speak, I'm negotiating a deal with many of these seasons for a US-based streaming platform. But I can't yet go into the details because we haven't finalized the contract, but I'll update you on that. And I'm really pleased to know that, even globally based platforms are now interested in hearing Caribbean voices.
Well, the more they hear them, the better. That's what's necessary, right, at this particular moment. I think one of the things that we realized with the past year is that we are global. So, we can get to talk to folks in Trinidad. We're a Zoom call away, and do live music together. Create deals. Like, all of this is now available to us in a way that it never has been before. And even as we begin to reopen, we've got to keep those elements going so that we can learn from each other and do business and make money together.
Absolutely. You're so right. I've seen such an increase in interest in Caribbean-based artists, filmmakers, you name it, for ever since the pandemic, and people were sort of forced, to go online and look at what's happening in the rest of the world and see different events on. It's definitely been an increase that I've experienced personally and in my practice from agencies kind of reaching out and wanting to know, well, who are the Caribbean influencers and where can I find more soca music or where can I find reggae? And it's been great because, I mean, that's how we all grow, through just kind of knowing how the world works, outside of your specific country, and doing business and deals with each other that help a more diverse world.
And it's necessary. You just have to, like, there's no going back to like our closed societies ever again. Like, once we've now seen this is where we have to go and keep going to and keep expanding for. So, with all the success you've had over the years, talk to me about a time when you had a challenge where you're like, there's no way I'm getting through this, and then you did.
That's so many challenges. I mean, yeah, I mean, gosh, I would say probably the biggest challenge, I think, would have been figuring out how to continue the Business of Carnival series and how to keep it growing and how to keep it alive, season after season on my own, without the help of a network or a global player being involved. So how did I overcome that? So I think that if I had to pick one season, because now there are 4, I would say early in the day. So maybe it might have been in a season 2, let's say, where I sat down and realized very quickly that in order to earn, or rather be able to earn some money so that I could pay the service providers, the film crew, director, and earn some money for the company, I would have to figure out how to make the show attractive to brand partners and to sponsors, but either through product placement or otherwise on social media. And I realized that in 2019, although for me, social media was so obvious in terms of marketing, a lot of traditionally based companies didn't really get it. They thought Instagram was for kids. And I remember I had sat down and literally slaved to create a brand proposal because I have no training in that whatsoever. I did not know what to do. I got a couple of templates from friends in marketing agencies. And I kind of tried to put together a proposal of why this show would be beneficial to you as a company. I gave data, I gave analytics, everything. And I thought this was such a well-done proposal. And I remember going to the company, sitting, having to do a whole PowerPoint. And eventually the feedback that the person gave to me was that Instagram is for kids, because I told him that one of the biggest audiences for some of these shorts associated with the show, the teasers, was on Instagram. And he said, Instagram is for kids. This is essentially that, this was a waste of his time. And I was so demotivated and devastated because so much effort had gone into it. And we were just a month before the carnival season. So I didn't have a lot of time and there was no budget. And how I overcame it was kind of quickly realizing at that point that I needed to not just throw the proposals out to any company, but a company where the benefits would be easier for them to see rather than me thinking that, oh, this is so obvious, So I got home, I sat down, I called a couple of friends, we re-strategized, and literally just before the time frame where I had to give up because, as you would know in production, there's a pre-production period, then there's production and so on. Just before I had given myself the cutoff point that this is not worth it, I'm not going to be able to do this in time, I actually got a response from the tourism agency of Trinidad and Tobago, which is a government agency, saying, you know what, this looks really great. We'd love to be affiliated. How can we come on board? And this was about a day before, and that was a huge learning for me that, sometimes the answers are just there, just in front of you. But you stress yourself trying to go after, these corporate agencies and these top agencies and these names that you think would be so beneficial. but the answer is not there. The answer is in an opportunity that has an easier and better fit, and for whom, it just makes more natural sense.
Awesome. And you found your way. That's what you have to do.
Yeah.
So, thinking about all the work that you've done, and the way you've been able to navigate all these different seasons of your life, what do you think you'd tell 25-year-old Carla?
I would tell 25-year-old Carla to relax. That's what I would say. I would say to relax a bit more, to know that everything works itself out. It literally does. Everything works itself out. Even if it does not work out in the way that you had envisioned, it's for the best. Because sometimes out of the biggest failures, or what I consider to have been failures in my life, those were the biggest blessings. And this is not just professionally, I am talking about even personally. Personal relationships that you figured, oh my gosh, I'm just so sad this breakup happened. And then you kind of realize as you look back on it, this would have never worked. It just never would have worked out. And a professional relationship, or might have been a job that, it just didn't work out. Thank God, because it propelled me into going in a direction that really made more sense. So I would say to my 25-year-old self, yeah, relax, it's fine. It just does. It's okay. Go with the flow a bit more. Allow the flow.
Now that's great. That's wonderful advice. Just allow the flow to come through. You'll get through it. So there's so much going on. You're incredibly busy. You're doing so many different things. What do you do for your self-care?
Well, you just mentioned it actually, yoga. That's exactly what I do. So it's so funny that you said, kind of yoga it out, because I've gotten very heavily into yoga and meditation in the last 2 years. And that is what kind of keeps me balanced, and I would say keeps me sane, because it's just so much to figure out constantly on a daily basis. And without that balance, I definitely think that I would not kind of have the strength to keep going. I have a daily meditation practice, which I, use to kind of help me figure out, what are the things that matter for the day? What are the things that not? Because I used to have a habit of writing a list. And by the time I was finished that list, I'd be so exhausted to even start the day because the list would be so long. But now I know, what, it's just three. What are your three top things? And I have that system allows me to kind of really zone in. And interestingly enough, during the pandemic last year, during the height of the lockdowns, I discovered nature. And I never would have seen myself as a nature seeker, a hiker, and so on. But there was nothing to do. Like, I was accustomed to being out at night late, going to lots of music events, going to festivals, and I had nothing to do but go out and hike and go for walks. And that gave me a real sense of peace that I did not have before. And now I look forward to it on an evening. I try to, as much as possible, at least 3 times a week, just go for a walk. And that's very, very centering.
I was just going to say that, like, similarly to you, I've never been hiking my entire life until last year when I went to a spa. And one of the activities was going to hike. And I'm like, well, I'm here, I might as well do one. And I got to tell you, it was so refreshing to, like, actually, because I'm a beach person, I love sitting at the beach, but there was something very relaxing about just enjoying the hike. Yeah. So I'm right there with you, like, getting back to nature, breathing the air, or being amongst the trees. It's super calming and gives you a grounding that you absolutely need.
That's exactly the thing. That word, that grounding, that's it. Because I, definitely was finding myself on a path where I was so much, you could just be all over the place with so much to do and so many plans, and you need that grounding. That's exactly the word. And I did not feel intuitively that the gym would have been the best environment for me, because again, that it just felt like it was work. I didn't want to
Right.
work after I spent a day at work. I didn't want to go and be forced to lift, whatever, 3 dumbbells or jump up in an aerobics class. So I just wanted to kind of just do what I wanted to do to just unwind. And that's what the nature and the walks allow, just kind of going at your own pace. And yeah, you dress however you want to dress, you just head out and that's it. And it's
And then you're
really,
on
it's
the way.
really, really healing.
It really is. Getting, I would never, now I know my friends hike because I was like, this is some hokiness. What are you talking about? But yeah, it is super refreshing. And yeah, it does center in a way that you don't think about often. So I totally agree with you on that one. And now last question, do you have a give and or an ask of the audience?
I would say my my ask would be that if you're interested in collaborating with or learning more about Caribbean influencers, to definitely reach out to me. So you are a talent agency, you're a marketing agency, you're launching new campaigns. That yeah, let's have a call. Let's work together to create more diverse faces and accents in campaigns. That would be my ask. You can reach out to me. And my give would be for you to learn more about how to navigate the Caribbean entertainment industry and the carnival industry, to hop on to YouTube. My YouTube channel is my name, Carla Parris. And you can see all these seasons of the show. They're there for free. It's an educational show, and you will be able to definitely understand more about the rules as they apply to the Caribbean in filming and marketing and a whole host of different areas in the entertainment industry.
Fantastic. This works. Carla, you are just such an incredible force of nature. And I'm so glad we were able to be connected because all the things and you're right. And you're in the middle of it all. And I think so many people can learn from you, especially my fellow Caribbean brothers and sisters who need to talk to you because it's like, own your stuff. Trademark that, please. We'll put all the details in the show notes for folks to get in contact with you and watch your show on your YouTube channel and follow you on the social medias and so much more. But thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure. It's great to talk to people who are also doing really interesting and great things overseas. I just like connecting with people and I really appreciate it and enjoyed this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And that is our show.